So now that Amazon Prime in Canada has posted the 4 seasons of Miami Vice, not the 5th season, probably will be going up later. We're going to take a quick look today at a very, very wide range of up and coming actors, established actors, musicians, and various celebrities, including cameos, that appeared on Miami Vice. Now, we're not going to do everything, but I want to talk about some key episodes. Now, we all know that Jimmy Smits, later of LA Law and Star Wars fame, was Crockett's ill-fated partner, was blown up in the pilot. Now, in that episode, Belinda Montgomery played Crockett's estranged wife, but she was recast later on. The second episode, Heart of Darkness, had Ed O'Neill. Now, the Dennis Farina, a very underrated actor, and Joel D'Alessandro, and Dan Hedia, who had a recurring character, but after that was in the episode One Eye Jack. Of course, Bruce Willis played the arms dealer in No Exit, the 7th episode, and Burt Young, Michael Madsen, and Terry O'Quinn. That's a triple play right there in the episode Give a Little, Take a Little, number 10 of the season. Now, the key one that I want to talk about today is the Golden Triangle Part 2, where the beautiful Joan Chen, backed up by Kay Luke, the Japanese Gizmo's father from Gremlins, appears, and of course Smuggler's Blues, where you got Glenn Fry, Richard Jenkins, and Richard Edson. Pam Grier, our beautiful luminous black star, appears in Rites of Passage, with and also John Turturro's in there as well. Now, in The Maze, Ving Rhames plays a Haitian immigrant called Georges. Now, Isaiah Morales appears in The Home Invaders, and also the great Sylvia Miles. Now, Giancarlo Esposito appeared again in Nobody Lives Forever. Now, Farina again showed up as a mobster at the end of the season. Now, this is where it gets freaky. The Prodigal Son episode, the two-parter to start season 2. You had Gene Simmons, of all people, Penn Jillette, Pam Grier in the return character, James Russo, Louis Guzman, and Charles S. Dutton, so that was pretty big. Eartha Kitt showed up in the Voodoo episode, Whatever Works, with a special appearance by Power Station, led by Michael DeBarge, who was friends with Don Johnson at the time. Now, Out Where the Buses Don't Run, the great Bruce McGill was backed by Little Richard as a televangelist, and the great actor David Stratham as Hank Wieldham's partner, Marty Lang. Esposito shows up again in The Dutch Oven. Nathan Lane, of all people, with Frankie Valli, showed up in Buddies. Now, Miles Davis was episode 6, Junk Love, with Ray Sharkey, very underrated, showing up in Tale of the Goat. Now, it's El DeBarge has a musical performance in Bought and Paid For. Bob Balaban, G. Gordon Liddy, Patty DeVarnville, who was Johnson's former paramour in Iman, that is David Bowie's wife, shows up. And of course, Phil Lachille with Keira Sedgwick playing the paramour to Phil Collins. And the great Emo Phillips as well. Now, Ted Nugent showed up in Definitely Maybe. Jan Hammer, the main person who did the music, shows up in a cameo in One Way Ticket. Danny Sullivan, the track driver, shows up with the Fat Boys and Charles Rocket in Florence, Italy. Leonard Cohen, playing an Interpol agent, shows up in French Twists. Now, to fix, this is what I watched today for you. Harvey Fierstein plays a straight, literally crooked lawyer. Michael Richards as a fixer, with Bill Russell and Bernard King as a father and son duo who were been asked to throw a match to stop Judge Ferguson from losing all his money. Now, again, payback, of course. Roberto Duran plays a scene where he tries to frame Crockett by killing himself. Dan Hedia and Frank Zappa playing a Latino drug kingpin, typecasting what? So Michael Jagger's former wife, Bianca Jagger, pays in Free Verse, another appearance by Louis Guzman. Trust Fund Pirates, Tony Chong, Gary Cole, Denny Dillon, and Richard Belzer. Denny Dillon, of course, from Saturday Night Live, and Joan Leguizamo and Leo Ayakoko in Sons and Lovers. Now, in the opening episode of the 3rd season, Liam Neeson shows up. Balaban returns in Stone's War with G. Gordon Liddy. And Ron Perlman shows up in Walk Alone. As well, A.J. Dewey, the Miami Dolphins player, as a convict, played Hammer. Charles S. Dutton shows up again in The Good Caller. The great Willie Nelson in El Viejo with Steve Buscemi, a very early performance. Stanley Tucci appears in Baby Blues. Bill Paxton, Wesley Snipes show up in Streetwise. Mark Braylon, the fighter, and Don King show up in part 1 of Down for the Count part 1, as well as Randall Tex Cobb. And in the part 2, Pastorelli, D'Alessandro, and Chris Elliott. Pretty weird. Now, Duty and Honor, a.k.a. The Savage, Academy Award winner Hang Sonor, shows up. But Helena Bonham Carter, as well, as she shows up in back-to-back episodes, including Teresa. Leguizamo and Vincent D'Onofrio and Margaret Avey show up in The Afternoon Plane, and John Glover lend me an ear. Annette Bening, early performance, appeared with Viggo Mortensen, Lou Diamond Phillips in the very good episode Red Tape, By Hooker, By Crook, Melody Griffith, Johnson's Wife at a Time, George Takei, Lou Albano, Vanity, Veronica Cartwright, and Afa Anoa, which is the wrestler, of course. Knockhouse, who was there, Ian McShane, Elizabeth Ashley, and Sam Art Williams. John Matuzak, the Raider star, showed up in Viking Bikers from Hell, as well as Kim Coates. Benicio del Toro was in Everybody in the Shower, as well as Kota Mundi. Now, in the first episode of season 4, Tucci, Philip Baker Hall, and Meg Foster, my old pal, showed up in Contempt of Court. Amen Send Money, Brian Dennehy, Ben Stiller, Anita Moore show up in that episode. Kaylee Lynch in Death and the Lady with Penelope Ann Miller. Alfred Molina in The Big Thaw. Belinda Montgomery, Crockett's ex-wife, she comes back with Ving Rhames as well. Isaac Shaft Hayes. Isaiah Morales in God's Work, as well as Rosana de Soto. James Brown in The Missing Hours. Chris Rock as well. Can't get better. Teller shows up in Like a Hurricane with Jan Hammer and Sheen Easton, who had a recurring role. Arlie Emery was in Rossing Son of Death. Laurie Petty was in Love at First Sight. Harry Shearer was in The Cows of October. Strange title, of course. Michael DeBar shows up again as a pimp in Baseballs of Death with Lisa Marie, our great luminous actress, the ex-wife of our great director, Oliver Platt as well. Now, the Barbara Streisand shows up in Badge of Dishonor. Ironically, she dated Don Johnson for a little while. Now, Tucci and Meg Foster show up again in Blood and Roses with Frank Stallone. Lisa Vidal in Bullet for Crockett. Sheen Easton shows back in and Delivers from Evil. And Chris Cooper and Tony Fargas and Tony Azito, where Crockett has a mental break where he thinks he's undercover version. Now, in Hostile Takeover, Matt Frewer shows up, who also shows up in Redemption of Blood. The great Rosalind Shaw in The Heart of the Night. Melissa Leo and Jermaine Stewart, the singer in Bad Timing. In Asian Cut, Spider Martin shows up. Richard Jenkins shows up in Hard Knocks. Amanda Plummer, Christopher's daughter, Fruit of the Poison Tree. Miguel Ferrer in To Have and to Hold. The great Canadian actress Robert Joy, Rita Moreno, Paul Provenza, and Conrad Roberts in Miami Squeeze. Michael Chiklis shows up in The Lost Madonna. Kevin Corrigan in Over the Line. Leguizamo shows up again in Victims of Circumstance with Carol Black and William Hickey. Ian McShane shows up in Free Fall, and Robert Beltran is in that too. Dennis Farina comes back to play the mobster Albert Lombard in World of Trouble. John Castellanos in Miracle Man. The great Keelan Martin, Laura Zanchi-Como, Keith Gordon in Leap of Fate. Of course, Keith Gordon, now the great director. Pam Grier shows up in the final episode of the series. Tubbs' ex-lover. And again, CCH Pounder. So you got to look at this. They had every possible celebrity that was part-time or full-time actor. But to see Little Richard in the episode where he's preaching on the street, I don't even think he thought he was in the show. I think he really thought it was preaching. So you're a big fan of Miami Vice. Again, there's only 4 seasons on Amazon Prime Canada, so just go through the episode. You have a favorite actor I've just mentioned. But the top 3 for me, just my personal opinion, is Phil Collins as the scammer, Bruce Willis as the arms dealer, and the great Roberto Duran, who tries to frame Crockett by making a homemade gun. And you can tell it's not Duran's voice because Duran can't speak very good English. But Don Johnson had a lot of connections. PMT never brought those people in. So you might as well count, 3-4 of his ex-girlfriends showed up to the show. Patty DeVarnville, Barbara Streisand, Melanie Griffith, wives or otherwise. So ladies and gentlemen, look for more Miami Vice podcasts in the coming days. It's just the fact that we've been waiting for the unedited version, like musical-wise, to show up on Canadian TV. It's still a very minimalist show because half the time music drives the plot. There's like 7 to 8 minutes of music per episode where there's no dialogue. So, and Phil Michael Thomas and the love scenes with Pam Grier were so hot, I guess they had to be edited for broadcast. But the way it goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here with our Miami Vice tributes, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.